I'm Connor Old, and welcome back to the 8th season of Old's Oscar Countdown. We are back for another season of Old's Oscar Countdown. We are going to be predicting the 2024 Oscars. I can't believe it's already been 8 years, but I'm glad to be back, glad to talk about what I think is going to be one of the most exciting Oscars in years. We got big blockbuster movies that are also prestige movies, and the Oppenheimer, but then we also have, I think, a race that is still very much up in the air for Best Picture and the Best Lead Actor and Lead Actress category. I think we're going to have a really fun race this year. But if you guys are new to the series, welcome. This is my 8th season where I've been predicting the Oscars. I've been doing this now for 8 years, where I essentially week by week go through all of the different Oscar categories leading up to the Oscars. But what we're going to do this year, similar to what we've done in past years, is talk about more than just the Oscars. That includes Critics' Choice and Golden Globes and BAFTAs, predict what's going to win there, and then understand how that ultimately impacts the Oscar race. So for all things awards, we cover on this channel, always once a week, sometimes 2 times a week, depending on the different announcements and nominations that have been announced and how that things change, and emergency episodes and all the like. But if you've been a fan of my Ultimate Oscar Showdown series, I'm glad that you stuck around and continued to watch the channel. Or if you're just an old Oscar Countdown fan, welcome back. But essentially for the past few months, I've been covering, breaking down, and tier ranking the Best Picture winners, Best Lead Actress winners, actor winners for all the decades, starting from the 2010s all the way into the 70s. We've been doing that for months now. A lot of great analysis talking about some of the greatest Oscar performances of all time. So if you want, check out those videos. They're lots of fun too. But hey, if you're here for the Oscar analysis, like I know this is my flagship series, so I appreciate you coming back and hearing my thoughts. We've had great success over these past 7 years now, these 8 seasons of accurately predicting things like the Golden Globes, things like the Oscars, particularly the Oscar nominations. We're continually, year after year, in the top 10%, in that elite percent of predictors. But ultimately, at the end of the day, I'm here just to give you the information. I'm going to give you my thoughts and my personal opinions, but I want to still give you the pros and cons of other movies too, so to help you understand your own Oscar predictions and make your own Oscar predictions and make the most educated guess that makes sense to you and help you guide you along that journey while having a fun time doing it. Last week's episode, I mentioned that I was maybe going to start off with a film festival roundup. I decided, screw that, let's just jump into the big one, the Best Picture predictions. So in this video, I'm going to be talking about my current 10 Best Picture predictions from 1 to 10, including a couple possible contenders. Now, I want to note that they are ranked in likelihood of getting nominated for Best Picture. I'm not going to come out and say that this movie, my #1 movie or my #2 movie, is definitely going to win Best Picture. Right now, we don't have enough information. Some of these movies, haven't even been released yet, so it's hard to judge in that sense. I will be doing a Best Picture update video in January sometime, so these aren't my final predictions either. I'll have eventually a final Oscar nominations predictions video all the way in, I guess, January, by the time right before the Oscar nominations are announced. But in the meantime, we're going to be covering every single Oscar category, even down to the minutiae ones like visual effects and cinematography, and giving them their due and really talking about them like they are one of those big 5 races. Because those technical races, in terms of getting great top 10% scores, it's about giving a great analysis of those categories just as much as it is giving great analysis of these sort of bigger categories. Now, before we jump into things, I also want to mention that I went to TIFF this year, so I've seen a lot of these movies, which I think gives me an extra insight into the types of movies that I've done that have been nominated in the past while I've been covering this channel, but also how the Academy is changing, and just gives me a little bit of an insight there. But with all my videos for Old Oscar Countdown, I will make timestamps in the description, so you can check that out and jump around if you just want to hear me talk about one movie or another, or you want to skip the intro and just jump right into things. So starting off with the #1 movie that I think is going to get nominated, and that is Oppenheimer. Now, I'm not 100% convinced this is going to win Best Picture. Oftentimes we do see the early frontrunners flame out and you get a little bit boring, and then the Academy decides to go with something totally different. I think last year The Fabelmans was sort of the big front runner with Everything Everywhere All at Once as a lurker, but I identified in my very first episode how I thought Everything Everywhere All at Once had a great shot, and then what happens, it breaks all these Oscar wins and, does a total sweep really of the Oscars, and it is a huge success, and that was just last year. But Oppenheimer still has a very good shot to win, which is why I'm putting it in my #1 slot. First of all, the big thing that I like to think of is Cillian Murphy is the frontrunner to win for Best Lead Actor, I think, and I also think that Robert Downey Jr. is the frontrunner to win for Best Supporting Actor, and that's important because if you look at the past 5 years, the last 5 Best Picture winners, only one of them won Best Picture without also winning an acting award as well, and that was Parasite. So for the most part, if you want to win Best Picture, you should also try and win a Best Acting Award. I mean, just look at last year, Everything Everywhere All at Once won 3 acting awards, and that really helped his chances, of course, of winning ultimately Best Picture. And that makes sense because the actors are the largest group within the Academy. There are more actors than there are directors or craftspeople and whatnot, so that's very important. So Oppenheimer has that element to it. But of course, it's not just an acting movie. It also has the technical elements too. I think it's also going to do very well in technical categories. My big sort of concern, I guess, in terms of why I'm not 100% confident it's going to win is just because I think it has a little bit of that somber ending. It doesn't leave you sort of really hopeful or emotional at the end of the movie. A different sort of emotion, sort of a graveness or a sadness, you could even say, of what's to come. But usually we see Best Picture winners have a little bit more of a hopeful, enjoyable ending, so Oppenheimer wouldn't fit into that. But in terms of nominations, it has the tech support, it has the Best Picture, it has the acting support. I think Christopher Nolan's a well-respected director. I expect him to get in for Best Director and maybe even win that category. And at the end of the day, the way I think about this movie, Oppenheimer, its sort of Best Picture corollary is Schindler's List. That's a movie that, similarly to Oppenheimer, was a period drama, emotionally wrought, black and white, at least in parts with Oppenheimer, movie. And that movie was a huge success. People forget about that. It made over $300 million at the box office, which translated in terms of adjusted for inflation to today's money, that's about $650 million. Oppenheimer did even better than that, but that was a huge hit for a R-rated 3-hour sort of blockbuster that also won Best Picture. So Oppenheimer would follow a similar trajectory, I think, to Schindler's List in terms of getting a bunch of technical awards and then also getting Christopher Nolan to win for Best Director. And if you compare the careers of Christopher Nolan and Steven Spielberg, they do line up in many ways. I think Christopher Nolan is a household name, similarly in the way that Steven Spielberg was and still is for a lot of people. And Spielberg, his early nominations were for the blockbusters, then he tried to do something serious with Color Purple, which got some respect but didn't win Best Picture, and then finally he won for Schindler's List. And I think Christopher Nolan, if you look at his career, got some nominations early on for his blockbuster movies like Inception, then he'll do something like Dunkirk, which doesn't win Best Picture but gets a lot of Oscar nominations, well-respected period piece, and then finally now maybe with Oppenheimer, the big one, get a bunch of nominations, maybe even an acting win, and then sort of follow suit. So this could be a big time winning movie in Oppenheimer, but regardless, I think it will get nominated. Then the movie in my number 2 slot is going to be Killers of the Flower Moon. Pretty simple calculus here, really critically acclaimed from Apple TV, and they won a couple years ago for Coda, so they know how to campaign a movie and know that they're going to put the money behind it. I think it's actually going to make a lot of money at the box office for a streamer, which will help some of the older members of the Academy that just love theatrical. And then if you look at Martin Scorsese himself, you look at his 21st century output, movies that he directed from the 21st century, 6 out of the 8 movies he directed were nominated for Best Picture. So there's a pretty good likelihood that this will get nominated too. It's been playing the sort of major festivals. It's got the heavy hitters of DiCaprio and De Niro. Seems like it's a very long movie, so it feels epic and important. And it's Scorsese, and they love him, and they love DiCaprio, and they love De Niro. And it's just one of those movies that you can pencil in as another great late period masterpiece from Scorsese. And its best chance to win is by sort of playing up that narrative of this may be Scorsese's last chance to win Best Picture or to win Best Director. I don't think that's totally going to go through, but I do think this is a Best Picture nominee for sure. Then my third pick, I'm going to go with Poor Things, the recent film by Yorgos Lanthimos. His last film, The Favourite, was nominated for a Best Picture and a bunch of Oscars, winning one for Olivia Colman for Best Lead Actress. I think this movie will have a similar sort of trajectory. Similarly to The Favourite, the movie is sort of strange and weird, but I don't think it's inaccessible to a large group of the Academy, particularly as the Academy has gotten a lot larger and a lot more international, weirder type movies like, even like a Parasite, I don't think would have gotten nominated 10 years ago, or The Favorite, Yorgos' last movie, wouldn't get nominated. So I'm not too worried about Poor Things being too weird. And it was a big smash hit out of the Venice Film Festival. It won the Golden Lion, which is their top prize. And winners of the Golden Lion in past years have been Roma, The Shape of Water, Nomadland, Joker, big-time Oscar movies, including a couple of Best Picture winners. So if Poor Things wants to follow in suit with that, it could very well potentially even win. I think it can maybe even get 2 nominations for Best Supporting Actor. I think Emma Stone can probably win for Best Lead Actress for this film. It's strange, it's unique, it's different, but it's still very entertaining, and it's sort of weird, but not so crazy art house weird that it would alienate a lot of people, and that shows by its success at Venice with a bunch of critics and industry people. They already really like that movie, and winning the Golden Lion there is a great sign for its future Oscar prospects, so I expect Poor Things definitely to get nominated and to play with The Favorite, similarly how The Favorite did, in terms of getting some technical nominations, production design, costume design, get a bunch of acting stuff, and then probably director, writer as well. And then the 4th pick I have for Best Picture is Barbie. Of course, the other half of the Barbenheimer sort of phenomenon of this summer. I don't think it's, even though it's more successful at the box office than Oppenheimer, it doesn't have the sort of same level of prestige that Oppenheimer has. That has sort of a serious, weighty drama aspect to it. This is very much an overt, broad comedy. The Oscars don't usually like to recognize these types of movies, but I think it's one of these movies that you can't ignore. Not only was it such a huge box office success, but it's from writer-director Greta Gerwig, and Greta's last 2 movies, Lady Bird and Little Women, the movies that she directed, also got nominated for Best Picture. So it feels like, the Academy feels like, oh, it's one of our own doing well and succeeding, and not just sort of another corporate franchise movie sequel. It seems, it's the first Barbie movie. It's got this very sort of unique voice, this transgressive approach to it, and the Academy in recent years have been rewarding more and more blockbusters, Black Panther and Dune. You even see Elvis last year. So I don't think they're necessarily against nominating movies. Think about Avatar 2 as well. So I think Barbie, even though it won, the sort of box office award of the highest grossing movie of the year, it feels like it's one of their own because it's Greta Gerwig. It feels a little bit different, and does feel like you have to reward it because of how much of a big deal it was and how pop culturally relevant it was. So I don't think it's going to win for Best Picture, but I do think it should get in for at least a nomination, and then probably Ryan Gosling, supporting actor, costumes, production design, song, things like that, and maybe, who knows, maybe even Greta Gerwig for director. Then my 5th nominee, I'm going to go with The Holdovers. Now, this was a runner-up for the People's Choice Award at TIFF, which was a bit of a surprise, but I'm not going to hold out against that for the movie. It still got 2nd place. It still was very well appreciated by the Toronto audience. I saw it there at the premiere, and it was a very funny movie. It definitely got the crowd laughing a lot, and it's a very heartwarming movie as well. This is from director Alexander Payne, whose past movies, Nebraska, The Descendants, Sideways, have all been nominated for Best Picture. So he is one of these guys that the Academy likes, and this is sort of another smash hit. I saw Downsizing a few years ago at TIFF, and that had sort of a tepid mixed response, and then ended up not doing too well with the critics, and then didn't get nominated for Best Picture. This is not the case. It got lots of great reviews from the critics. You can tell just by being in the audience how well it played, and it has that sort of brilliant Alexander Payne, a dramedy feeling where you feel very warm towards the characters, but you're also laughing and having a good time. I don't think this is going to be a big technical movie, but this is a classic writing, acting kind of a movie. I think Giamatti gets in. I think Divine Joy Randolph gets in. Maybe even Dominic Sessa. Definitely writing, and then maybe even something like Alexander Payne for screenplay. So in a top-of-the-line type of a movie, but a sort of good, heartwarming movie that I think will appeal to a lot of different types of people. That sort of broad support will endear it within the Academy, and I'd be surprised if this doesn't get nominated. It's sort of a one that maybe doesn't have a strong chance of winning Best Picture, but I'd be surprised if it doesn't get at least nominated. Then my 6th pick, I'm going to go with Maestro. This is Netflix's big film this year, and every year since 2018, Netflix has had a movie nominated for Best Picture. Even last year, where we were unsure, is this going to be the year? Is it going to be Knives Out? What ends up being All Quiet on the Western Front? They just have strong international support. They always run a good campaign. They always get their movies nominated. They always have at least one movie a year. And this year, I think that's going to be Maestro, because you look at some of Netflix's other movies. The Killer, I don't think is going to be a big Oscar movie. Nyad and Rustin may get some acting nominations, but Maestro is their big movie, and that actually helps Maestro because he'll have all the support of being Netflix's sort of big ticket to potentially win Best Picture. And I think this is almost a sneaky Best Picture contender because right now the two leads, I think Carey Mulligan for Best Lead Actress and Bradley Cooper for Best Lead Actor, they have a good shot at maybe even both winning their respective categories. I think Carey Mulligan's in the lead for Best Lead Actress. I think Bradley Cooper's either number 2 or number 3 for Best Lead Actor. Of course, this is from director Bradley Cooper, and his past movie that he directed, A Star is Born, got nominated for Best Picture and was an Oscar winner and overall well-liked movie. So this one got good reviews out of Venice. I think it's going to be a little bit more divisive among critics, but I do think it will play very well within the Academy because the Academy loves biopics. They love these sort of character-type studies where actors can really dive into it and understand things, and this sort of back and forth between Carey Mulligan and Bradley Cooper and their sort of dynamic. I think it's going to play very well within the Academy and maybe even a sneaky dark horse Best Picture winner if Netflix really wants it and puts a lot of money behind it. And then my 7th pick, I'm going to go with Past Lives. This is actually maybe my favorite dark horse contender. Even though I have it at number 7, this movie can definitely go all the way and win Best Picture. I'm a little bit hesitant because I go, well, is Celine Song getting in for Best Director? And then Greta Lee is sort of on the 5-6 slot for Best Lead Actress. John Magaro is sort of in 6-7 for Best Supporting Actor in terms of my personal rankings. So I'm concerned about that, but it does remind me of these movies like Minari or Call Me By Your Name, or even something like Everything Everywhere All at Once last year, where they premiere early. They premiere at Sundance, they get a lot of buzz, they're smaller movies, but they just continue to build steam, and more people see them, and more people rave about them and hear great things about them. And Past Lives, I think, has a similar trajectory. Probably more like Minari than something like Everything Everywhere All at Once, but definitely a very satisfying movie from A24, who's done, something like Minari or Everything Everywhere All at Once, so they know how to sort of platform these indies and get good Oscar campaign and Oscar buzz. The concern is some of the other nominations. It's not a technical movie, so it has to get director, screenplay, and the acting. But the acting categories are going to be really competitive this year because you have big names like Carey Mulligan and Sandra Hüller and Annette Bening and Emma Stone. And is Greta Lee going to sort of break into that group? I don't know. But if Past Lives is a real contender, we'll see stuff like that. We'll see it get to appreciate it at, say, the Golden Globe or Critics' Choice and get a lot of support there. But it is a movie with a very satisfying ending. It does have that sort of go out of the theater sort of blown away kind of a feeling. Very well reviewed movie, one of the best reviewed movies of the year from a first-time director in Celine Song. So maybe she gets in for Best Director as well. A very powerful movie, a very critically acclaimed movie, and I do think is sort of the little indie movie that everyone agrees upon as just a really satisfying emotional experience. So even though it's at number 7, I do think it will get nominated, and I could potentially even see it winning for Best Picture. Then number 8, I have The Color Purple, which is the one movie that hasn't premiered, that no one's really seen, but I'm going to go out on a limb and predict it to get nominated for Best Picture at this time. Just the way you see Warner Brothers positioning this movie. This is one of their big movies. Now that they don't have Dune 2 this year, they're going to put a lot of their marbles behind this movie. They're premiering it, Christmas release date. We'll have reviews by then, of course. But it's a musical adaptation of the book rather than just a remake of the film. Of course, the first film in 1985, Spielberg's movie, got nominated for 10 Oscars. That was a very well-liked movie. I think Color Purple, this iteration will do similarly as well in terms of getting technical nominations, but also acting nominations. It has a lot of great technical elements, of course, being a period piece and a musical and the sort of big budgeted aspect of that. But then, of course, the acting, I think, will do very well in terms of supporting actress, potentially even 2 nominations, actress as well, and a good combination of newcomers where the Academy can go, oh my God, who is this person? I'm really enamored by this person. I'm so amazed by their performance. I hadn't even heard of them. Let's put them in. But then there's also going to be, good favorites like Taraji P. Henson that they really like. The Academy has shown support for in the past. So maybe, she gets in for a supporting actress as well. So you have a little bit of a combination where even if the newcomers aren't that good, you have Taraji P. Henson to fall back on. The movie, I think, will be sort of this big, bombastic, enjoyable, crowd-pleasing musical. That's my expectations for the movie in terms of what we've heard so far, which is how Warner Brothers is positioning it. You can sort of read the tea leaves on some of this stuff. So I do think The Color Purple will get nominated for Best Picture. Then my ninth pick, I'm going to go with The Zone of Interest. Now, this is the latest film from Jonathan Glazer, who hasn't made a movie in 10 years. And he is a sort of sophisticated art house type director. And my one concern with Zone of Interest, why it is so sort of far down here, is because it's mostly going to be a director-driven movie. Get maybe in for cinematography and maybe a production design, and will get in for Best International Feature. But it's not going to get probably any acting nominations, and it may be a little bit too out there for general audience members. It is a little bit strange in terms of just how it approaches its subject matter. That being said, it's still a World War II a period movie, and the emotional connection is very clear and very harrowing and very somber. And it's an incredible film, and Jonathan Glazer, I do think, will sort of fit into that director slot of the sort of international director, because this movie has the combination of being both a Hollywood movie and also an international type movie. It's a Hollywood movie because Jonathan Glazer's last films, with Birth or Under the Skin, he's worked with major Hollywood actresses, Scarlett Johansson and Nicole Kidman. But he's also an international kind of a director because England's actually submitting this as the UK selection for Best International Feature, because there are not really sort of a lot of known actors in this movie. Sandra Hüller, but still sort of international type actors. There's not a big, American star in the film. So it feels sort of prestigious and feels sophisticated. It played at Cannes, where it was the #2 runner-up to Anatomy of a Fall, which we'll talk about soon. And I do think this is sort of a movie where Jonathan Glazer gets in for Best Director because of the respect that people have for this movie and the directorial achievement of it. And because the Academy over the past few years has been expanding their international group, and the members within the Academy have become more international, they will appreciate an international director like Jonathan Glazer and throw their support behind this movie. But then, of course, he also has the Hollywood support because of some of the actors he's worked with in the past. So I think that sort of dual combination will allow it to push it over the edge of a very somber, harrowing type movie, but a movie that feels important. And then my 10th nomination, I'm going to go with Anatomy of a Fall, another movie I've seen. I saw this one at TIFF, and it's a little bit more populist. It's still an international feature about a French trial, but it feels a little bit more populist, a little bit more entertaining, so it'll appeal, I actually think, to Hollywood members as well. So it has the international support that, that has shown support for movies like Parasite and Triangle of Sadness and Drive My Car. In the past few years, we've really seen a support from the international members of the Academy throw their support behind some of these international movies, something like All Quiet on the Western Front as well. So usually when I'm thinking about the 9th, 10th slot, I'm not going for Napoleon, for example, where that movie may have gotten nominated in past years. You're trying to look for the next international type movie. I think Anatomy of a Fall can definitely do that. It's very entertaining for Academy members that are interested in diversity. This is from a female director, Justine Triet, so she may even get nominated for Best Director as well, and she co-wrote the film, so there's a little bit of an authorship there. It's an entertaining movie. It's a very engaging movie. It appeals almost to the sort of mystery, true crime element that has really dominated documentaries in Hollywood in the past few years, so I think people will connect to it there, but still also feels sophisticated and French in the best way possible. Won the Palme d'Or at Cannes, so has sort of that international prestige already. So I think the international members of the Academy will throw their support behind Zone of Interest and Anatomy of a Fall as their sort of two big ones. Unfortunately, Anatomy of a Fall was not submitted by France as their international feature film, so it won't get nominated for Best International Feature, but I do think if Justine Triet gets in for Director, and then I think Sandra Hüller has a great shot to get in for Best Lead Actress as well, and so that 4th, 5th slot, then all of a sudden you get Actress and Director, and that should be enough to push it over the edge for Best Picture as well. And then my two possible contenders, the first one being American Fiction. This one is here just because it got the People's Choice win at TIFF, and the past 11 People's Choice winners ended up getting nominated at Best Picture. That is one of the strongest stats that we have in Oscar prognostication. So you may say, Connor, why aren't you including American Fiction? It won People's Choice. Shouldn't that be an automatic nomination for Best Picture? Well, not necessarily. I think it's been a very strong stat, but a lot of the winners were already going to get nominated regardless of whether or not it won People's Choice. The Fabelmans was always going to get nominated. It didn't really need the TIFF People's Choice Award when, for example, that happened last year. So I don't think we should immediately rush and go, oh my God, just because this has happened in the past, we should put American fiction in there, because ultimately you have to look at the type of movie. Is this a trend or causality? Right now, I think this is a trend. It just happens to be that the movies that win People's Choice also get nominated for Best Picture, but not because of that. Now, it's still my #1 possible contender. We still have to take it very seriously, but you start to look at some of the categories and you go, is Jeffrey Wright going to get in for Best Lead Actor in a very competitive year? I don't really think so. Isn't he even going to get in for a screenplay? I don't think so. So then you try to figure out, where is it going to get nominated? And that's hard to do. But this is also a movie that is a comedic satire, and usually, like I mentioned before, comedies don't do as well with the Academy. They'd rather give the period, prestige, weighty drama of something like A Zone of Interest the spot, instead of something maybe like American Fiction. That being said, it did play very well at TIFF. So once we see a little bit more, rather than just the one image, and we see more trailers, we can start to understand the type of movie it is. But even though it won People's Choice, I am a little bit skeptical of its chances right now, but it's a possible contender for sure. That's why we are mentioning it here. And then my other possible contender is All the Strangers. It feels like this year's After Sun, the sort of quiet, small, intimate movie that is emotionally devastating for some people, but if it doesn't really totally work for you, you're not going to feel the passion to want to give it a Best Picture nomination. Also, this is from director Andrew Haigh, whose past films have not been really big Oscar contenders, even though they were very well acclaimed within critics and stuff like that. So I think Andrew Scott could get in for Best Lead Actor. That's a possibility. Maybe Paul Mescal for Supporting Actor. I think he gets in for Screenplay. But for me, it feels like a screenplay and then acting nomination, but probably not in for Best Picture. That being said, it's a possible contender for sure because of its critical acclaim, because of the actors involved, because of the great performances that they give, and also this is from Searchlight Pictures, and Searchlight are expert campaigners. They usually get one of their movies in. Now, they have Poor Things, so that's going to be their main movie, but they have enough of a support in terms of campaigning that if they are trying to get something in here, maybe All the Strangers sort of sneaks into that final slot. But that's about it, guys. I hope you enjoyed the video. Let me know in the comments down below your personal top 10 rankings, and like the video, subscribe to the channel so you get back onto this Oscar journey. We're always going to be uploading these videos Monday at 12 p.m. Eastern time, but sometimes there's going to be multiple videos a week, so you want to subscribe so you don't miss those videos. And please comment below. That's why I do this stuff. Why I'd like to give my predictions, because ultimately I like to hear your predictions. I like to hear your thoughts, and we can compare and go back and forth. That's why I ultimately still do these videos, because I love doing it and because I love to hear what you guys think. So please do comment below, like the video, subscribe, support the channel in those ways. But that's about it, guys. I'm glad to be back, and I'll see you next time. So until then, stay tuned.